going to jump straight in and actually just build a new course, which we're then going to create an assessment topic, put a couple of questions in, look at showing results to the learner, but then also to allow the learner to generate and print as a PDF the actual certificate itself. So let's just start off as we usually do with building a new course. I'm going to say create a new course. So I'm just going to first of all give it a name. Certificate example. And also don't forget that Gomo's got really strong capabilities to help you create multi-language courses, a single course that contains multiple languages and it tracks as a single course, including in terms of translation. We also now have OpenAI translation as well built into Gomo. And again, we cover that in other webinars. Today, I'll make it single language. I'm now going to select the look and feel of course, what we call a theme that's going to give me my branding. Again, we cover this in another webinar in terms of using the theme editor. I'm just going to use the Ponte theme today, which I can then edit. This is about the structure of a Gomo course. So a Gomo course isn't just like a PowerPoint deck where you start at the first slide and go all the way through to the end slide. Instead, we have these higher level building blocks called topics, which in turn contain screens. So I might have a topic, say if it's an onboarding program for new hires, a topic about the company's history, something about the company's products and services and so on. Those would be topics. And we can link those topics together in different ways. So here I'm going to say I want an introduction, I want a menu. And I'm going to say, well, I think 3 learning topics is going to be enough for me today. I can add as many as I like later on. These are the elements which appear in the toolbar, so they'll always be available to the learner throughout the course, like help and glossary. And here I'm just going to take the defaults. We're not making this multi-language, so we don't need to give the learner a language selector. I'm just going to click create. So Gomo's just going to create an outline course structure for me with some sample content in there. And so here we go. It's just generated this top level view. Remember, this is like our storyboarding level. These are our topics. So I'm going from an introduction leading to a menu, simple branching out to the learning topics. Of course, if I need it, I can have more complex structures here. I can have subtopics. I can have dynamic branching or adaptive learning. So an example of that might be that I can ask a learner a few questions about the subject matter at the start of the course, and then based on how they answer those, I could be guiding them to the relevant material and locking and unlocking content. I could have a mechanism to prompt them to select their job role or job function. Again, we can remember that choice, and then what the learner sees on any given screen or their whole journey through the course can depend on the choice they made. So it's the same course, just looking and behaving differently. But let's jump straight in here because we want to begin to build an assessment that we can then put a certificate at the end. So I'm going to nominate this topic here to be my assessment topic. So I'm just going to right mouse click and just give it a label. Always a good idea to label your topics and screens as you go through. And click apply. So this is almost like our storyboarding level. So let's jump straight into the assessment topic and start to build an assessment with the certificate at the end. So it's just going to open up the editor in another tab here. And we'll just have a quick guided tour of the editor for those of you unfamiliar with the Gomo editor. That's what we'll see when it loads here. Is that we'll have a navigator panel showing us all the screens in this particular topic. Just being a bit slow with the GoToWebinar connection here. Okay, let's just close that and reopen that. And also just switch off a few things here. And let's try opening that again. That's better. So on the left-hand side here, that I have the navigator panel. This shows me the screens in this particular topic. Gomo's given me 2 dummy screens in there. When I load the content into the content area, two important things here. There's no canvas size to this. I'm not having to nudge content around, say, to be 100 pixels from the left and so forth, because the beauty of Gomo courses, they'll automatically run on any screen size, any device, in any orientation. It does that by using this block and column structure, where I can take a content block and divide it into a number of columns, and Gomo will use that to reflow the content, particularly across smartphone. Also, I don't need to worry about fonts and colors and so forth. That's coming from my theme, my style template. And I can go into this instant preview here and see what my content will look like when I'm editing content. There's no font button. I just select a style, and how that will appear in terms of fonts and colors will depend on how that's set up in my brand theme, my brand template. But in this case, I'm going to actually just get rid of those two dummy screens, because we're going to begin to build up this assessment. And the first thing I'm going to do is just to add a screen. So at the bottom left, I can add a screen. Lots of different ways to add screens. Today, I'm just going to work with blank screens, so I can put in whatever I want in there. And this first screen is going to be where I just prompt the learner to put in their name, because I want to then use that name to be able to put that on the certificate. So the first thing I'm going to do here is to add in a way for the learner to be able to type in their name. So all the things we can add into a Gomo screen are what we call assets. For those of you on last week's webinar, I sort of covered quite a few of these different things that we can add. I'm going to start off with the most basic things. I'm going to drag and drop, put some text in there saying, please type in your name. And just give it a style. So starting off in a very basic way here, please type in your name. Now I want to give the learner a way to be able to type in their name. And the way that we do that is we treat it as a type of question. Is that I go to use my text input. So this is where you might be using this as a question where the learner has to type in the right answer. Obviously, in this particular case, then we don't need to score them on whether they've got their name right. So here, if I just double click, so we don't want to track this in the assessment because we're not actually asking the question. And we're only going to have one attempt at typing in your name. There's no correct answer, so I can remove that. And the initial text, this is what will appear in that box. So I can just say, type your name here. And we don't want any feedback here. Again, because we're not using it as a question, it's purely a mechanism to be able to get the learner to type in their name, which we can then use later. And we can just quickly go to preview to see how that's going to look. And also what I can do, just as a refinement here, that it's possible to attach actions to questions. This could be quite nice in assessments where you just want to say show a question on the screen, and then once the learner answers, immediately go on to the next question and so forth. So in this case, just to make it simple, I'm just going to attach an action to the question. So once they've typed in their name, simply move on to the next screen. And now what I'm going to do is just add in a couple more screens where I'm going to put in some questions. Again, we're going into more depth about this whole area of questions in other webinars and creating assessments. I'm simply going to put in two questions. Question one, so again here, drop in some text, the so-called question stem here. And for speed, I'm going to use the default question for the multiple choice. Where is Gomo's headquarters? And now I need to choose a way for the learner to answer it. So I just choose this list of questions. What I'm going to use here is the most commonly used question type, which is multiple choice. And here we can only have one correct answer. And again, this is where we can specify the number of attempts and so forth. Here, I'm just going to say we're going to get one attempt at this. In this particular case, I'm going to give them feedback after they answer the question. Again, you can just choose to have no feedback at all, which might be more typical in an assessment. So again, I'm just going to apply there. And question 2, because we're putting these in because obviously we want to be able to get a score and then we want to put that on a certificate. So here we can just ask another question. So I'm going to say which of these are true of Gomo. So in this case, we're going to use so-called select from list because we have one or more things being true of Gomo. So apply, and again, this time I'm going to go to the question section here, use select from list. So I'm just building up a fixed set of questions. Don't forget that you don't have to have a fixed set of questions. You can be randomly selecting questions from question banks as well. But here I'm just going to put in a couple of fixed questions here. So here again, we just need to, I'm going to say I've got one chance there, and I'm going to give some feedback. And I can put as many options here as I want in there. So I'm going to click apply. So we've now got 2 questions. And now what I'm going to say, well, that's our assessment. Now what I want to do is to tell the learner how they've done with that. So I'm going to add in another screen. This is going to be my results screen. So we haven't reached the actual certificate screen yet. We just want to give the learner just some feedback about how they've done. And we do that in Gomo using an asset in the question section here called the assessment results asset. Now, this is what turns a bunch of questions into an actual assessment. It does all of the hard work for us. So here, the first thing is this is where we could say put a pass mark. So I'm going to put a pass mark of 50%, so I'll get one of the questions right, I've passed. Also, we want to be setting a course score, because this can be both reporting that back to the learning management system, but also so that we can pick up the score and put that onto the certificate. This is where we can give some feedback to the learner. You can modify the message here when they've passed, failed, or maybe they've done particularly well, and you might say, well done, you've got all of the questions right. So a nice, easy way to be able to add up the scores and give some feedback and set that score as well. So let's just check how this is looking so far. So the first thing that I want to do, let's go into preview. Please type in your name. Confirm. Notice there, it immediately triggered to move on to the next screen. And here we can just, here we're getting feedback. I can move on, so forth. And I've got that right, move on to the next screen. And so we've got the feedback saying, well done, got 100%. So now let's go on to what's at the heart of this webinar, is looking at how we generate a certificate here. So I'm just going to label this certificate. Go back into the editor panel. So let's begin to, what we're going to do here is build up what we want to appear on the certificate. So first thing I might want to do is to maybe put a company logo on the certificate. So I go to the assets. Here I'm going to use an image, and I'm just going to click and just going to search for a logo. And here I'm just going to use a Gomo logo, center that there. And now the next thing that I want to do is to be able to display the actual name of the learner here. So remember here that in the first screen that they typed in their name, and we can actually get at what they've typed in using so-called asset variables. So basically all of these different assets like text input, multiple choice, etc., sort of remember what was typed in the case of text input, or an option that was chosen, say, for a multiple choice, and we can get to that. And we do that by referencing the unique ID of this particular asset. And that's what we actually see right in this top corner where it says ID. It might look as if it's actually quite a random jumble of letters and numbers and so forth, but it's very, very carefully structured. It's actually referencing the unique course ID, the topic ID, the screen ID, and the asset ID. So by taking that and just copying that, it gives me a way to reference this particular text input. And from there, it gives me a way to be able to get at the name that was typed in. So the next thing I can do here is to just go in and, first of all, let's just go and get a text asset. And now let's begin to build this up. So first thing I'm going to do is to display the name. And I do that in this particular format where I can say double, what I call is curly brackets or curly parentheses, whatever terminology you might choose to use there. And what I do here, and this sort of as close as I get to programming really with Gomo, I put in asset underscore variable dot, and then what I do is put in that unique reference number there. So if what this should do is to display whatever was typed in to that text box, namely my name. And now I can begin to build up the text here. Set up this as well. And I can say so-and-so has passed the course with a score of. And now what I'm going to do is to use another type of these variables. Now, this is sort of one of the built-in variables in Gomo. And I'm just going to copy and paste the actual format here. Again, we've got those double curly brackets there. And here we're referencing something called Gomo underscore course underscore score. And what that should do is actually display the actual score that the learner got. And now I can also say, well, they passed the course with that score, and now I want to put a date on this so that they actually know when it was actually done. And again, we can do that. This is quite a relatively new feature, be able to display date and time. And if you go to our knowledge base, support.gomolearning.com, in the Gomo community, type in date, and you'll see an article there which explains all about the different date and time variables that you can use. The one that I'm going to use is just what's called date long. And by the way, this will actually pick up what we call the locale. So in my case, it will display a sort of UK date format. If you're using this in the US, then it would show a US date format. And again, that's just using that square bracket, date underscore long. Okay, let's see how this is doing at the moment. So again, let's just save that. Let's go back to our first screen and see whether this mechanism's working, because then what we're going to do is look at well, how does the learner actually print this certificate? So we'll go back to the preview. Type in your name, confirm. Okay, let's just get these right and move on. So here, got one right, one wrong. So I've got one right, I turned score 50%. And so here we go. So it's picked up my name, plus a score of 50. So obviously we need to make a modification then, put a percentage, and it's picked up the date format here in UK date format. So it's beginning to work here. So what we're going to do here, first of all, let's just tidy that up and put a percent after that score. But now what I want to do is to add in a button so that the learner can click that button to download a PDF version of the certificate. So the way that I do that is just to add in a button in the center there, and I'll just put that to say print certificate. Okay. At the moment, this button doesn't do anything, so I need to add in an action, essentially a trigger. What happens when the learner clicks on that button? So I add in an action, and here what you'll find, again, a relatively new action to say print screen, which is going to take what's on the screen and generate a PDF and download it. That's fine, but the trouble is with that is that if we go into preview here, that the print certificate button actually then becomes part of the screen, which will get printed. And we don't really want that to appear on the certificate. So we can have a bit of a subtle variation here. For those of you who have joined other webinars, you'll be familiar with the concept of display conditions, where we can show and hide things on the screen based on certain things happening. And we can do that to hide the button under certain circumstances. What I want to do is say, hide the button as soon as it's clicked on. So when it generates the PDF, that button isn't going to be there. And again, what we can do here is add a display condition to this. And the one I'm going to use here is asset interacted. So what we mean is that as soon as I've clicked on, in this case, the button, then, so here's my button that I want to monitor for whether it's interactive. And I want to say, show that button as long as it hasn't been interacted with. As in interacted, it's false. That means as long as I haven't clicked on the button, then show it there. But as soon as I click on it, hide it and do the action attached to that. So if we've done this right, then in the PDF certificate, then we shouldn't actually get that in there. Okay, so let's just save that again. Go back to the navigator panel. Let's go from the beginning. Let's go to preview, type in your name, confirm, again, confirm, and let's get one right, one wrong. I've got 50%. Okay, and now if I click print certificate, that's going to go off and create my certificate there as a PDF document, which will then appear in the downloads folder. Just have a quick look at that. And okay, let's have a look at that. So we get a PDF there with all of that content, but without the actual print certificate button. Of course, some variations that we could have on this is to only let the learner move on to get the certificate if they've actually passed. And in fact, there we could be either having our own button on the screen, or we could add in a display condition to the next button to say there. So only if course score is greater than whatever it might be, 50%, are we going to actually let them move on to the next button. We could also modify that so that we're not going to give any feedback to the learner. We could, when they answer the question, we only give the feedback to the end, and we could just select the no feedback option there. And then we could also, as I did on the text input, just have it immediately going on as soon as they answer, move on to the next question, and so forth, just to streamline that whole process of moving through the assessment. So just to recap here. Oh, in fact, Nanette's asked a question here. Is there a way to get the button back if, for example, the learner picked the wrong printer? It's not actually selecting a printer. It automatically generates a PDF for you. So it will remain on the screen there, on the certificate screen. So yeah, it just generates a PDF. So it doesn't actually select a default printer. It's got a PDF mechanism generation in there itself. So it will just download the PDF. They can then open up the PDF, say in Acrobat Reader, and then choose if they want to actually print it to which printer there. So just to summarize the mechanism there, that we've let the learner type in their name using the text input. We've remembered that unique ID for that text input to use later. We've asked two questions. We've added in the results screen using the assessment results where we've triggered it to set the course score. We can give feedback there. We can set the pass-fail mark. And then on the certificate, this is where we built up the things that we wanted to appear on the certificate, including displaying what's in that text input by using this asset variable reference. We inserted the score using the built-in Gomo course score variable, and then we used the date variable to be able to display the date, and you could display the time as well as shown in this article. And finally, we gave them a way to be able to create that PDF, to download the PDF, put a button, we added an action, we used the print screen action there. And then as a variation, just to refine it, we added a display condition on that button to say, once you click the button, hide the button so it doesn't appear on the certificate. So again, just combining a few techniques in Gomo, quite a few of them quite recent additions to Gomo to be able to, in this case, create a certificate.